Hey everybody, welcome to this issue of Staffing Monthly, the industry's only digital publication that focuses on bringing you actionable insights, tools, technology on recruiting, on marketing, on sales, leadership, and really everything you need to hear from the industry thought leaders on how to improve your agency and the value you provide to your clients to help you grow. And today, we're actually going to be demoing one of the 4 leaders in technology in this space that really helps agencies not only optimize the recruiting piece, but they have some elements and overlap into the sales space they're going to talk about. And it's a really cool product called Staffing Engine. If you've not heard of it, I would be shocked. But if you haven't, it's something that you definitely need to pay attention to today to learn what the future of recruiting and using technology to augment your recruiter's capacity and improving kind of the value you provide to your clients to help your salespeople go out and communicate that. So you can grow your agency. And I actually have 2 of my favorite people, not just because they're tech wizards in the staffing space, but also because they're Boston fans. We love the Pats, we love the Celtics. There goes most of our viewers right there. But for those of you that are left, let me actually introduce you to Matt, Dichter and Jay Cutler from Staffing Engine. And Matt, I'm just going to kick it over to you, and I'm grateful that you guys are here with me today.
Yeah, we're happy to be back on Staffing Monthly. Matt Dichter, I lead the sales organization here at Staffing Engine. Prior to joining Staffing Engine, I spent about 9 years at a small company called Bullhorn. So I've worked with staffing and recruiting agencies of all shapes and sizes across various verticals and regions. And we're excited to present this solution. I think last time I was on, we probably talk shop. So
Yeah.
excited to give some insight into what we're building here at Staffing Engine. And Jay, while I pull some things up, I'll flip it over to you for a quick intro.
Yeah, sure. So Jay Cutler, I'm one of the co-founders here at Staffing Engine. I've been staffing since 2011. Started at Randstad as a technical recruiter before moving over to Signature Consultants. And then Matt and I worked together at Bullhorn, where I was helping manage the partner ecosystem over there. So companies like Staffing Engine and a lot of others that a lot of you probably use. And then in 2020, founded Staffing Engine here. So I've really sat on both sides in the seat as well as on the vendor side here, and looking forward to giving you guys a demo.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, man. I've always been amazed by your product. And then when Matt said that you guys are rolling out some pretty cool things that people got to stick around and watch for ahead of Bullhorn Engage coming up here soon, I was like, let's go. Let's see it.
Yeah, we'll have some exciting announcements following Engage too, but we'll give you a little bit of preview into that today. So we're at a really interesting time and inflection point in our industry. You might have noticed that there are more technology vendors than ever reaching out with AI tools. So there's a lot of noise right now. And I feel that myself, in addition to being a supplier of AI solutions to the staffing and recruiting industry, I'm also a technology buyer for our team internally. And I get hit up all the time with shiny new tools, how to increase our pipeline, how to progress sales process. And so I also look at and evaluate a lot of solutions that are out there. I was on a podcast last week where we were talking about sort of a state of emergency around AI and staffing. And a lot of the data from SIA last year said that 44% or 48%, I think it was, actually had adopted or had plans to adopt AI. So it was about 50-50. And they ran that poll again this year, and that number only went up to 55%, which is interesting. It shows that there is a lot of early adopters, more so than ever, because our industry typically tends to be a little bit of technology laggards. Yeah. So there was a lot of folks that jumped in right away, got their arms around it, but that did not increase a ton year over year. And I think, as we go through this presentation, it's going to be really important to know that you have to have an AI strategy, and you have to have recruiters and salespeople leveraging AI, or you're going to get left in the dust pretty quickly. We're going to talk about the move to agentic AI from the initial generative AI and show you examples of both. And the forward-thinking agencies are already moving from Gen AI to agentic AI. if you haven't even started with generative AI, you're already behind. And at the rate that things are moving, there's a concern that honestly, if you're a smaller shop, it's going to be really hard to compete if you're not leveraging all the tools at your disposal, whether that's staffing engine, whether that's another company, or even at the base level, like going to the LLMs like OpenAI and using ChatGPT and that sort of thing in your day-to-day.
Let me ask a quick question there, because that's always been the dynamic of our fragmented industry, where you've got these massive companies like the Ronstads and the Adecos and so forth. And then you also have a whole lot of independently owned, right? Like the average revenue size in our industry is like 4 to 10 million, somewhere in that range, because there's so many. So there's a lot of smaller shops. So is it possible that if the small shop actually they could potentially get out in front of this quicker and actually use it to their advantage to better compete?
Totally, because those big
100%.
guys are oftentimes slow moving.
Yeah.
Even to do an enterprise-wide implementation, sometimes it's anywhere from 6 to 12 months, whereas we've seen smaller companies adopt some of our tools in 4 weeks. And so
Nice.
there is an opportunity to better compete. It's a really good segue. So as you evaluate AI and tech tools that are out there, we think that it's incredibly important to know your internal processes and know your pain points prior to engaging with companies like us. We're seeing a lot of window shoppers that come in and they want to look at all the tools, but don't ever end up making a decision. And it's challenging because they want to embrace this, but they don't know where to start. So we always start off with the problems that we solve for, and speed to market is the biggest. You see time kills all deals. That's something that me and Jay have been saying in sales and recruiting for years. But as the labor market's tightening up, what the problems that we're solving for are, one, we have clients that are either staying flat or in some cases downsizing. Hello, travel nursing. So how do we enable recruiters and salespeople to do more with less? Now, historically, the way the agencies grew was they'd hire more recruiters and throw more bodies at it. But with advances in AI and automation, you can plug in technology in some cases to better retain your own internal employees or not hire. We still don't think AI should be used as a replacement for a recruiter or salesperson. If they do make like a top level sourcer or another job level mundane, you can repurpose that person for something else that might be a revenue generating activity.
Yeah. So I agree with that. And just one point I want to throw in on the importance of this slide before you continue is that for those of you that are out there, if you're feeling the pinch and you're struggling with sales, it's a really good opportunity to reconnect with your clients, redefine your ideal client profile, and understand what value do they need to receive from you. So what service do you need to provide to be valuable? And in that sense, there's only 3 value drivers, and AI is actually not going to change that. That is a fundamental of business. Those value drivers are speed and convenience, as Matt was just talking about, price, right? And how do you do more with less, right? How do you get down costs? And obviously quality. If you provide a high quality service, those are your value drivers. And this is a big one that Matt was just talking about, is that time kills all deals. How do you make yourself available 24/7? Like, this is kind of the way the market is shifting. So be thinking about these tools in improving the value you provide to your clients in those areas, specifically the time and convenience piece.
Yeah. And on the quality piece too, I think like for a long time, the process was broken for staffing agencies where someone might come and apply on a Friday evening or Saturday morning and not hear back until Monday at some point in the day. But with AI, you can service that person then and there. You can qualify them, answer any questions they have, and we'll show you how we do that. And then ensure that there's an easy handoff, whether it's directly to a recruiter or a sales rep then and there, or allowing them to book time directly with someone at a time that's convenient for them. It's all about, we're a service-based industry first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so giving the candidate or the sales lead a good experience is paramount, and is a differentiator as well. Last thing before we get into the fun stuff. So we're going to show you 2 parts of our platform today. Jay's going to take the first, and that's all around improving the candidate client experience, driving conversion rates, and allowing you to become a 24/7 provider, both on hours and off hours. Now, we've come a long way in this area from where I think back to where we were a couple of years ago. And I think, the first generation of chatbots and things like that may have left the bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, because it was a whole lot of decision tree logic and leading them down a path and not a whole lot of AI. But as the LLMs have improved, and we're able to tie them into our solution, it yields a far more conversational experience, better service, AI job matching. You'll see all of that, which becomes a really big differentiator for our customers. And then after we talk about the candidate client experience, I'm going to pull it back from Jay and talk a little bit about internal recruiter and sales productivity and how you can arm your internal users with tools that allow them to work faster, work smarter, avoid misplacement opportunities, and do it in a way that's built into their workflow. Because I know how hard it is to get sales and recruiters to adopt new technology and new UI. And so we spent a lot of time thinking long and hard about how we can put this in the hands of sales and recruiters without disrupting their workflow and building it into where they already work. And that's a big thing, I think, as well.
Great. Looking forward to seeing this, the evolved tech. It's been a minute since I've taken a look at this thing.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let me get my screen up here. Can you both see this before I get going?
Yeah, I got
right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is our Acme Staffing website here. You can see here we have our virtual assistant, Acme AI, in the bottom right-hand corner. And so the goal here, like Matt said, is to have a very helpful assistant, not a dumb chatbot that sits on this website. It can have conversation with you, answer questions, qualify you, show you job matches, right? Same thing on the client side, can help answer questions, connect them with a sales rep, etc. We want this to be a full service agent at this point. And so today I'm going to go through the candidate experience, but again, just keep in mind that we can do the client side as well. And Dan, before I get started, any questions, anything you want me to preface here before we get going?
No, I want to see the natural flow of this, from the candidate, because the candidate experience is so important. So, and I like how clean this is. And your guys' branding is always on point too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we can change how this looks too, right? This is our demo environment, so your colors and your logos and the name of the agent can be customized, to your liking, etc. So as I go through here, I'm going to say that I'm looking for a position. And what's happening right now is when you're chatting with our website agent here, you're not actually just chatting with one, right? In the background, what we're doing is we actually have, I'm sorry if you hear it barking in the background, I have 2 dachshunds and the door just opens. So,
no worries, man. We're all dog people here.
But we're actually talking to multiple agents. So it's understanding what you're trying to do, right? So let's say, I know they're looking for a job. So I'm going to go see one job agent here. I'm going to give it my contact info. You can see there, we can upload a resume as well. So depending on the industry, right? This is a healthcare flow. If you're talking to people in my industrial, a lot of times they don't have resumes. Healthcare they do, but maybe it's midnight, they're on shift, they don't have it on their phone, right? And so you want to have both experiences, delivered to the candidate at that point.
Yeah.
So you can see here, right? In the past, normally you'd say, "Can I get your name?" Great. Now can I get your email? Great. Now can I get your phone? I was able to give it all 3 because these LLMs are good at parsing information, right? You can say, "I know this is a name, I know this is a phone number, I know this is an email." Now it's stored in memory in the background. So it's going to understand and be able to then use that data to immediately look that person in the ATS.
And so it's building the profile or also cross-referencing to see if that person's already in there?
Correct, yeah. So in our demo environment here, we have it turned off, but in production, if Kim was in the ATS, it would have popped back up and said, "Hey, Kim, I actually already have your profile. Can you confirm all of this looks correct or if you need to change anything?" So again, we can even speed up that process. Similar, like if you were to call customer support and give them your email or your phone number, they're like, "Great, I have your profile here. It looks like you've already chatted. What can I help you with today?" Right? We want to create that natural language type of experience, but also not have unnecessary steps if we don't have to, because we already have access to that information. So
Love that.
Yeah, and just know that, I'm going to cover more of an IT use case, but within the agent, we've got deployments in every vertical across various sizes. So like we have some customers that do healthcare here, and IT or, accounting, finance here. And so this can be tailored really to any vertical and company size as well. Go ahead, Jay.
perfect. All right. So again, going back to how a natural conversation works, when you start a conversation, you have a start and you have an end, but there's not a linear progression when you're a human, right? You can bounce around and have different topics within that conversation. The old chatbots, once you got into a flow, you'd have to stay in the flow. So here's an example of something where I'm asking now about benefits, right? It's a totally off topic from me applying for a job, but these agents now are smart enough to understand that, hey, I'm actually need to switch context real quick, answer this person's question, and then go back to what we were doing, right? The ultimate goal of this agent is to convert that person into the database and then notify a recruiter or a salesperson that that conversation happened. But it's able to understand, hey, I need to take a break real quick and go back and forth. So you can see he was able to answer my question about that and then said, hey, but now let's continue what we were doing, right? Let me get your contact info and where you're looking for a position so I can now start matching you to jobs. So again, from here, we have these quick buttons people can check if they're on their phone. Maybe it's a little bit easier. You can even like hit this mic button, talk to the agent if you want to. But also natural language, right? I'm just telling it, I'm an RM. Here's my specialty. Here's where I'm looking, city and state. And from there, it's able to pull out, again, key pieces of that information and then start to build, again, the rest of my profile to say, okay, here's what I know about you. Is this correct? Do you need to update anything? And again, in the ATS, all of this is happening in real time.
Nice.
Okay, this is correct. And from here, what it's doing, it's now trying to match me to jobs. So depending on what our clients want, we can say, hey, Rich, give me a minute. I'm looking for jobs for you. And we kind of keep them in that loading experience. You can see now 3 positions popped up. You can see they're all in Cleveland, where I said I was looking. They're all matched that category and specialty that I was looking for. So the goal here is frictionless apply, right? Right now, the experience you have is going to each individual job on a job board and applying. And that's good because you're finding the exact job you want. Here, our goal is let's get you in the database. Let's get you applied to a few jobs. So you're now in the system, the system is learning your preferences, and the recruiters actually have jobs to work off of when they pick up the phone and call you. So in the background here, let me go into Bullhorn.
I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask a question and I want to make a statement that I really like that flow, and I'm sure that I'm late to the game with making this observation and suggestion. But my first question before I get to that is, she said, I'm looking in Cleveland, right? Was there ever a chance where the agent might say, do you live in Cleveland or are you relocating to Cleveland? Because I think maybe there's okay.
It can do both. Yeah.
So for our light industrial or professional recruiting agencies where they're typically not looking to relocate, what we work with our customer to understand that during the implementation process, but usually it's, are you located there? And we're serving matches based on that. Now, if it's a travel nursing agency or an agency where it's common for candidates to relocate or to travel, then we'll ask, where are you located and where are you open to looking? And we can incorporate those different locations into a single job match. And show, basically latitudinal and longitudinal matches that also line up with their specialties, skills, and so forth.
I think that's great. I think it's nice that you can actually kind of train it to be that dynamic with what your agency offers and your candidate base is. One observation I see, and again, I'm probably late to the game with this one, but when you were just showing this, I was, in my mind, when you mentioned about applying to all those jobs, like it made me think about the job seeker going out on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or job boards, right? And then you go in and you put in what type of job are you looking for and where, and it brings you up the entire list. And then you got to scroll through all of them. You got to look at it and then apply, and some you click apply to, some that you scroll past, but you're still doing all that scrolling, right? And I feel like one of the reasons why more people are starting to do their searches on ChatGPT or Perplexity or something like that versus Google is because it just does all of the scrolling for you and gives you the answer. So almost in my mind, I was thinking if I'm an agency, I would actually make a quick marketing video about that. And I would start to say, hey, are you job searching? Do you hate job searching? Like, check this out. Go give us a little bit of information just right here. And then we'll just tell you all the matches we have. And you can do this at any given time, to see what we have available for you from the comfort of your own home and then quickly apply like that. Like, do you have agent? Again, I'm late to the game on this one, but like, do you have companies that are actually marketing it that way to showing how it's more valuable to the job seeker than going out and job hunting, even in the modern area of job boards?
We should tell our clients to push that more. I always when I worked at Bullhorn, I always told my clients that they should be advertising their usage of Bullhorn because they're like on the latest and greatest when they go to their clients and showing them how tech enabled they are. So I actually like the idea of showing, hey, this is how good our candidate experience and this is how frictionless our apply process is. So that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's fun. We actually on that podcast Matt mentioned last week, we were talking about how agencies can redo their websites to show candidates how good of an experience it can be and how they can help the candidate, and how that's even a better selling point to clients than like we do staff on, we do SOW. It's like, okay, cool. That's every other staffing firm out there. Like show your specialty. So it's definitely a good call out.
Yeah, and honestly, that would be a super simple video to make, and it would play really well on, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever. Like, just to show that little chatbot and like that just interaction happening, and it's like, wow, that was really easy. Anyway, I geek out about this stuff, and I think about practical applications. So, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jake.
No. It was good. It was a good interruption. So, going back into Bullhorn here, we're on Kim's profile now. You can actually see that we added a note after that conversation ended with that full conversation. So this one allows us to add, say, hey, we had some sort of interaction, or Kim had some sort of interaction with the agent, on this day at this time. If they're running note activity reports, if they're running their own reports in their own data warehouse, they can pull this stuff in. But it also allows the recruiter now to have context, right? So if they open up this profile, they can read the full conversation and understand exactly what they talked about. And, we've seen, especially in something like light industrial, a lot of people are like, hey, I have accommodations I need, certain days I can work, shifts I can work. I have a family member who's sick, so I'm relocating to this area of the state. Can I work out of an office there? Can you pass it along to the recruiter? And it's able to take all that information and display that back to a person, which is really cool.
Nice.
We'll also real quick send this into like a thing like Microsoft Teams, so that we can notify people that a conversation just happened. Because one of the worst things that can happen is this agent does a really good job. People are applying to positions, it qualifies them, and then it goes into the black hole, right? And then they never hear back from anybody. So how can we make sure that a human gets notified that this just happened and they can get a candidate can get an immediate follow-up by a phone call, text message, whatever it is, saying, hey, I see you applied to a few jobs. Let me talk to you about a few more and maybe even a little more in-depth conversation than we did with our agent. Rates about whatever it is.
Such a huge point. And I'll tell you, that is something simple that people can do, agencies can do. I just read an article today about a guy that was really frustrated. And these are the only articles, not the only, these are kind of the common articles that make the news reel, where it's like, this guy's been laid off and he was displaced by technology and he's applied to 800 jobs and he's only heard back from 10 companies. And it's like, yeah, it's because that black hole exists, because there's a lot more, job seekers applying because it's super easy to apply that recruiters are overwhelmed. So that's a huge piece, just to be able to see, hey, who's flagged for what, and reaching out to that person, having meaningful contact, that will differentiate your agency, So I appreciate you calling that out, Jay.
Yeah, and great segue kind of into the next portion here is that, as good as these agents are, it's still technology. It's still, is not perfect, right? Not yet, but it's a little ways out, I think, before robots become better than we are. But the goal here is also to be able to connect them with a human, right? So you can see here, I'm now asking if I can chat with a person, right? Can I speak with a human at this point? And we don't want to be a barrier there, right? We want the agent to be able to answer questions, especially if it's after hours, right? Hey, asking about benefits, how do I get my pay stubs? where are you located, all the stuff that you might need to like email or call for, that can be done. But again, the goal here now is to connect people live into the, so you can see here, I'm back in Teams, and I'm getting a live chat request here. We chose Teams because it's a UI that's familiar. They don't need to learn a new tool. They're in there most of the day anyways, and it's convenient, right? It's in kind of a list view. So once I click accept here, you'll see that it will actually, change to a accepted here and to green. And you can see the full transcript in here as well. So I'm actually going to read that and say, oh, I see that it's Kim. She applied to a couple jobs. So you can see here, Kim was actually notified that, I picked up the chat. You can see my message right from Teams going to Kim on the website here.
This applies to the speed to market we talked about earlier. Like when you talk about someone who's, and then I know this is inbound, I'll talk about the outbound in a moment. But when you talk about a website visitor who we now know is qualified and want to get them in touch with a live person as quickly as possible, giving them a way to talk to someone when they're right then and there on their website, opposed to having a recruiter have to go chase them afterwards, is huge. These typically will start in a live conversation and move to a phone call pretty quickly, but it's just all about giving that access. Now, if someone came in after hours or there wasn't anyone available to pick up that conversation, that's fine. We'll supply a meeting booking link and allow them to schedule a time. But we do see both on hours and sometimes off hours, our clients have recruiters who are quick to get back to those folks.
Yeah,
and then the transcript all gets stored as a note in Bullhorn as well.
Yeah, you can see that live chat note that we just added. Matt brings up a good point. Calendars can be very powerful in these workflows, but one thing we always coach our clients on, especially if they're like, yeah, we want to adopt calendars. It's like, all right, take a pause, because there needs to be huge change management efforts that go into adopting calendars. And the reason for that is if you have an agent that's autonomous that can sit on a website showing someone's calendar, you need to make sure that calendar is up to date, right? You need to make that recruiter or that salesperson needs to block off if they have a doctor's appointment, if they're going on PTO, if they're sick that day, right? Because the worst thing that can happen is a candidate books time on a recruiter's calendar. That person just left for a 10-day vacation. And then that person doesn't hear back from anyone for 11 days, right? Because that person has to go back through their inbox to find this stuff. So, it can be a powerful tool, but you have to make sure you have the underlying processes correct before you.
Yeah, that I completely agree. And I've actually lived through that personally, where it's like, okay, when I have someone else managing my calendar and scheduling things, I have to make sure that that I'm keeping things up to date, because I use my calendar for everything. So that makes sense. One thing technical that I wanted to just ask a question about, I noticed that on your side, the operator side, you put #close. Were you doing that because of the demo environment, or is that something?
No. So, so you can see whenever I type a message in here, it was going back to the site. The hashtag is just a command to tell the bot that this is an internal command. So don't send close to the basically externally. So, another good use case for that is, let's say, someone's asking about benefits, right? Because a human's not an agent, they don't have this like database they can just immediately pull, information from. Now, super recruiters that have been there forever might know and be able to answer, but a day two recruiter, they could type in something like #benefits and it will pop up the answer that they can just copy and paste and then send that to the person. So we can actually create kind of like canned responses for questions that people ask a lot of times on a live chat experience, versus, again, if someone asks an agent, would be able to answer them right away just because it has to access all that training data in this computer, so it can manage that. But again, humans don't have the ability to memorize everything.
No, I got you. And it is last thing, and then I'll get it back over to you guys. Is there a world? I think the world is now, but are there use cases or realistic use cases where, in the scenario that you just painted, where someone's like, hey, can you call me? Because maybe they don't want to text, maybe they just want to vocalize, right? Mm-hmm. And it actually triggers a trained AI voice agent to actually make that call and do the initial screening. Is that, I know in your example, you're like hand off to a real person, but Is there a way that like you could actually hand it off to a call vocal agent to cover that one?
That's a good question. Right now, we don't have that in the workflow. We work with a couple of partners who do voice, and we kind of made the conscious decision not to do it. Just we saw that there were a lot of companies out there that did it and did it very well, and we didn't want to have that be kind of something that would take focus away from other stuff that we were doing. So, we work with a bunch of different providers out there. So if that's a workflow that people are looking for, we definitely can have that conversation with them and scope that out. And my head of AI, I think, would be very interested to learn how we could kind of tie those two platforms together. So it would be a fun project.
Yeah, with like Bullhorn's getting into the voice game. We've got a lot of mutual customers with Converse AI. When you think about the workflow, we're sitting mostly at the top of the funnel, doing that initial greeting, deflecting, qualifying. And then once we get them matched up to one of our job matches, that's when the voice provider would take over and do the job level qualification. So there's a good handoff point there. But to Jay's point, like we wanted to kind of stick to our lane and do conversational chat really well. And when what we've seen is it works really well getting a live recruiter on with them after we've gotten, but you could obviously always send them a voice AI or something like that as well.
Makes sense.
Good question. The other thing too, before I'll try to do the assistant part relatively quickly. But we talked about like people coming inbound to the website, and there's also an outbound play. Most of our customers use a Bullhorn automation or a Sense or a Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and we have a lot of customers who are embedding our conversational agents in outbound email or SMS campaigns. And you can kind of understand how that would work based on what Jay said earlier. Inbound, if we recognize them, have information on them, we can serve them up job matches. Well, on outbound automations, we know that they already live in your database because you're marketing to them. And so you can see how like over email or SMS, we could immediately pass through the parameters to understand who they are, serve up their profile, and then immediately serve up job matches once they confirm their information. So there's, for some of smaller customers who might be listening that don't get a lot of website traffic, there's also a really good outbound use case where we can regenerate, requalify, serve up matches, and so forth.
So I've got a question on this one specifically, because there's actually a common situation or challenge that I've seen agencies run into when they start to try to use outbound out of their database. And it's usually around the sense of that most agencies have not done a good job nurturing the contacts in their database, right? They do a great job getting people into the database.
Mm-hmm.
They might screen some of them and then put them in there, but like they don't think about it like marketers. Like they're like, if you think about really good marketers that really cater to their audience and send tailored, messages to their audience, and they really focus on nurturing that audience base to create influence. Like most staffing agencies haven't done that. So in my very, limited experience, I've seen agencies send that message out, and then you get the, new phone, who dis, or, and it's just like, oh, you applied to this job 16 years ago and I had you in my database, and, and it's like, oh, I don't like, yeah, the last time we talked was 16 years ago, it's like, do you see that like as an issue, or are there any best practices that agencies can actually like do to make sure that when they're using a great tool for outbound, that it actually lands and the message has the intended purpose? Am I making sense, guys?
For sure. So there are actually a few great tools out there that can help with I've had this person in my database for 16 years, and the last time I talked to him was 10 years ago, basically, where we'll go and look at socials and all that kind of stuff and try and basically update that profile with up-to-date information. And then combining that then with what Matt was talking about, now you kind of have the best of both worlds. Hey, I know last time we talked was 10 years ago, but I see, I've updated your profile. I see you're now at company, C, last time we talked, you were a company A type of thing, right? So
I think that would definitely be helpful. Okay, that's a great bridge. That's a great bridge, because you're at least calling it out and saying, hey, it's been a while, but I haven't forgotten about you. So, okay, I appreciate that. That's actually a good bridge.
Yeah, but to your point, the agents need that data, right? Without that data, you can quickly kind of spiral into, your conversation to your point. So, that's why we like to work with a bunch of different vendors on this stuff. We preach data cleanliness just like every other vendor out there does, because AI needs it. So,
cool. Dan, do I have a few minutes to wrap us up?
Yeah, I want to. So I want to see. Did you have one more thing you wanted to share on the sales side that, like, to kind of tie that piece together, like internal or no?
Just know that that as clients come in, we can service them the same way, where we qualify, understand what they're looking to hire for, and then pass that data through. I'll talk about some sales stuff on my side as we get into this portion. You're able to see my bullhorn screen here.
Yep. Yeah, I got Jira, cool. The administrator up here.
So the next part is this little slide out here, which we call our AI assistant. And where this came from was both Jay and myself are former Bullhorn power users. Have also used other ATS and CRMs. And while what I would say is that historically, both ATS and CRM providers, while they provide a lot of value, it's a little bit light on task management. It's kind of labor intensive. It requires the end user to set follow-up tasks from themselves. So inevitably, things can fall through the cracks. And the other challenge that we've seen is that most notifications typically go into email. And email might have been a decent spot to send a notification 15 years ago. But with how crowded our inboxes are, those get missed all the time too. And like, I worked with clients over the years where their recruiters were literally forwarding their Bullhorn notifications to a separate folder or inbox.
Yeah.
And that just defeats the whole purpose of real-time notifications. So there's a few different things that our assistant does. And I'll start off on the real-time notification side, and then I'll move into the AI side. So alerts are things that have taken place in Bullhorn that are important to the end user. And you'll see that there's a settings tab where, as an end user, I can subscribe to what's interesting to me. So if I'm a recruiter, I want to know about web responses to jobs that I own. I want to know when clients that have been submitted, where they're at in the process. I might want to know about certain candidate updates on certain types of fields. And then if I'm a sales guy, I want to know about internal submissions when my recruiters send them to me, but I don't really care about client subs because I'm the one making them. So I turn those off. And then certain things like placements will send to the whole team. It's like a virtual wing gong. And as I go throughout my day, I'll get notified on anyone that I'm following or that I own that requires action. And the nice thing about this is, while I'm in Bullhorn here, we know that recruiters aren't always in Bullhorn. I might be out on LinkedIn and other places, and I still get those notifications in real time. So in fact, the people that Jay applied to, that Jay's candidate applied to earlier, because I own that job, I just got notified on those web responses from the agent. And then that live chat transcript landed in my extension here too. So I don't have to go into Bullhorn to proactively find that information. I can see that it happened here. I can click that job or click that candidate, and it drives me back into Bullhorn to take action on them. Now,
real quick, Matt, one thing to call out, Dan, is that what we don't want to do is have information overload, right? We don't want to send every single notification through that they just don't care about, and then they stop checking this. So we've made it so it's very configurable, right? So if only this stuff, it could be 3 things, it could be 10 things, whatever it is. You see a lot in Match because Matt and I make everything, so we get a lot of notifications in our demo environment. But we want to make sure that these are extremely targeted and that it's something that a person cares about versus just everything being notified and then you miss everything, right? So that's definitely something we want to call out to clients when we start onboarding this.
And I think that makes a ton of sense. And when I see it, I don't know if it was influenced based on like how Slack channels work. If you have an organizational Slack channel and you can, set that up, but then also even just your own notification management on your phone, like every performance, optimization expert out there will tell you that if you want to be a top performer, you need to minimize your notifications in all areas, whether it be your inbox, your text messages, your badge notifications, all that. So I like that you're allowing people to subscribe to only.
Yeah, less is more. These are all filterable. So if I want to see all web responses on jobs that I own, I can filter that and see that view of it, and then mark them as a favorite to come back to later and so forth. Think of it as a smart task manager for your database. Now, one of the early pieces of feedback we got from customers is, hey, alerts are great. They've already happened, though. What about things that haven't happened yet that I want to know about? So that's reminders. And reminders are things like, hey, your candidate, Ron, is coming up on the end of assignment in 45 days. You should go reach out to him to see if he's looking for a new role. Or I'm sure this never happens to anyone, but we have a candidate who rolled off assignment 15 days ago that we didn't redeploy. Maybe I should go back and talk with April here. Or you had a candidate, we talked about this earlier, Dan. We had a candidate that was initially contacted 24 hours ago. No new note actions have been added. Go follow up with Tom. So again, historically, these are all things that a recruiter or salesperson would have to set a follow-up task in the system or run a list view on. Now we're bringing this to their information before they miss that opportunity. Now that we've notified them on important things that have happened or are happening, that's where the really powerful AI solutions come in. And I'm going to show two quick examples, and then that will we can put a pin in it. On the job side of things, this looks like a very common job that we might get from a client or have some high-level notes. This is okay. It's certainly not SEO optimized, and we don't want to publish this out to our website. So if I come in, I click job description, and I enter that job ID, what's going to happen is we work with our there's a lot of generative AI tools that are out there. What we see a lot of is that they're built to meet the needs of a wide audience, but they're fairly general. One of the advantages to us being a startup is that we can get sort of in the weeds with our customers to understand exactly what they want their JDs to look like, what they want their submissions to look like. Do they do different verticals where a job description on this side of the business might need to look different than this side of the business? And then we use that information to build templates that produce really good, clean-looking outputs. And so what happened here is we took this and we turned it into, let me scroll down, this published job description, which is obviously looks a lot better, has more information. It's going to attract more candidates to apply. So that's on the JD side. Now
real quick on that too, we can totally configure that output if you have a certain template you want to use, but make sure that the specific information, internal description is added into that template. That's what we can do there. To Matt's point, there's some tools out there where it's just going to be generic pretty much every single time, and it's going to take you just as much time to go back and rewrite that output than it would have if you just went to ChatGPT in the first place, right? And ChatGPT is not connected to your database, so there's that disconnect there versus fully integrated and the output they were looking for the first time.
Nice. So now we've got a candidate, maybe they applied through our website agent, and I'm a junior recruiter. I don't really know I don't know what makes a good Jira admin, so I can't say for sure, but he looks like he might be a good fit. So now if I go in and I go to submission write-up and I put in Yo's candidate ID and that job ID 189, what's going to happen is, and this is where generative AI really levels up like junior entry-level players, I'm going to look at that job description, look at the requirements, compare Yo's resume and any recent note activity or structured data on his record, and I'm going to compare the two together. And if it's a good match, we'll leverage AI to actually create a submission profile to send to their account manager. If it's not a good match, we'll explain exactly why they're not a good fit and why they shouldn't submit. So in this case, Yo gets a 9 out of 10. we outline the exact reason why Yo's a good fit. And there's some items to confirm down below that we didn't see on Yo's record that we did see in the job record. So like this could help someone who doesn't know what makes a Jira admin, or even if there was a senior recruiter who does know, but they don't want to spend their time creating an in-depth write-up. We've just saved them a whole lot of time by generating this in about 30 seconds. And it's also a good opportunity for that more junior player to understand and learn from.
And real quick, tying this back to the sales side, right? When I was a tech recruiter, I actually cared about my write-ups because I wanted my account managers just basically be able to copy and paste the core of my submission and hit send, right? Versus a lot of times where they get this internal submission, hey, here's my submission, and they have to go write their own, right? So now not only are we allowing the recruiters to do a really good write-up, learn why this person is a good fit for the role, we're now enabling the salesperson to save a bunch of time by being able to read that, fully understand. If they get on the phone with a client, they can go through that submission, read it, not word for word, but summary of it, and then also just copy and paste and hit send. So you're saving time on both sides of the equation now, which equates to faster submissions, better submissions, which we all know as a numbers game and speed game leads to more interviews and placements. So that's really the end goal there.
Yeah,
especially if you're competing in into a VMS system that's 100%. Actually stack ranking your engagement rates,
speed to submit,
and also engagement on orders, right? But let me ask you, so since you've already done so much of the work for the junior sourcer in that scenario, is it a bridge too far to go if you have hey, these are the areas that we're concerned, these are some things that need to be confirmed, right? Is there a way that maybe even you could just tee up some interview questions? There's hey, you might want to go ask them these questions this way to almost teach that person how to do it. Or even better yet, have bot engine, or engine bot, just reach out and say, hey, yo, we're actually about to submit you to this position. You seem like a great fit. Couple things that we wanted to confirm before we did. Can you just answer these questions for us and just get kind of finish with the profiles? Anything like that makes sense, or is that in the works?
I like the automation point that a couple that Matt didn't show is we have summary pre-screen questions. So we could use that to say, hey, make sure you ask these questions before you do it. To your point, we can put that in the output too and the items to confirm. But the goal here is to use kind of AI at every step of the way. And eventually we can even just have pre-screening questions automatically show up in the job, right? Before as soon as that job is created and the job description is put in, boom, there's a field that has 5 pre-screening questions people can ask, about the patient. So that's kind of the future workflow. It's not actually really far away. And to your point, I think with some of the automation on the outbound front, that could be good. But when you do that, you add in, there's still that delay there, right? Your goal when you're doing that internal submission is say, I want to get the external submission right away, pretty much. But going back and confirming is not the worst thing, but it definitely takes time.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one, and this is a use case or a thought that's outside of your guys' swim lane. But one thing to your point that you mentioned, Matt, about taking maybe a junior sourcer and leveling them up a little bit with this tool, I do agree. However, sometimes the tool does not make the craftsman. So it would be really neat if there was a way to almost create a learning or knowledge base that just says, hey, this is how we evaluated this. This is how we determined. This is what we looked at to make sure this was a 9 out of 10 match. And this is what we looked at to determine the areas of that need to be confirmed. Almost convert that into a training module and give that. And I'm not saying you guys should do this, but if there's a learning and development company out there that could use that sort of data of what your bot was figuring out to actually really teach that junior sourcer. So then they're okay, then they actually are learning the hard skills as well. So they better understand how to use that tool even better.
Yeah, that's a great use case. And we can have another agent that creates a separate thing. Here's exactly why we did that, right? Versus the kind of just generic, the ready to go write up. But what we do to Matt's point is if that person was a 4 out of 10, we actually put in, here's why this person got a 4 out of 10. Here's what we recommend you look for this person. So it does turn into a bit of a training tool when it's not a fit. And again, if it is a fit, now they know, okay, I can see a resume that looks like this and I know it'd be a good fit. So we kind of are like reinforcing that this is a good person. And then we're trying to do the, negative reinforcement when someone's bad. Here's why, here's what you should look for. So if you see another resume that looks like this, they're not a good fit for that role. So we're doing that in a roundabout way, but I like the call out that we can store that and actually turn it into more of a kind of a knowledge base and training agent down the road. So
I think it would be a huge value add, because if you think about it, at the end of the day, at least for the time being, it's still going to be that human sourcer, human account manager, human sales rep, whoever that's going to be talking to a client. And if they really understand the process of how they're evaluating talent against the criteria and they can speak it confidently, it's going to create more value with the agency. If you just say, hey, I've got this tool set, well, you know what? The next competitor down the road that also has Staffing Engine, they can do it for cheaper. Now that agency, because they don't have that knowledge of how the service is really being done, they might actually be disadvantaging themselves. So, and you've got all the information to really skill those people up and develop it. And right now, when humans, especially in our space, are thinking technology is going to replace them, the more that we can equip them with skills and knowledge and all that stuff to be the better user of technology, I think the better we're going to be at, retaining our people and developing our people to be the agency of choice. So that's just where my head goes, because I love the people side of our business. I love you guys too, the technology side. I don't want to dismiss that, but
Yeah. I think we're good. Hopefully that was a good update. I think at the end of the day, when you look at our core value drivers on the candidate client side, it's all about driving that experience, driving the conversion rate. We've seen plenty of examples with customers where their website conversion was around, 5 to 10%, and now it's, 15% or sometimes even greater. So there's, major gains around converting not only to apply, but converting ultimately to submittal and placement. And then on the internal side, it's all about how do we get our people, faster to information, faster to act on that information, increase their outputs, increase their speed to submit, and just work with more speed, which I know is a hot button for you, and we totally agree with. Because at the end of the day, it's still a speed game, and that's why we're that state of emergency was really important, because if we're in a speed game and our recruiters are not leveraging tools that our competitors are using to get those speed gains, it's going to be really hard to compete.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, and that really is. I mean, right now, quality has always been important, but it's crazy to me how speed and price are the two main drivers of buying decisions right now. So if you're in this industry and you're like, how do I win more business? You have to figure out, how do you deliver a faster service, a more convenient service to both sides, the candidate and the client. We're a marketplace. And you have to figure out, how do you do it, inexpensively to reduce your operational costs so you can actually compete, at a competitive price point. If you can deliver on those two value points, you are going to win more business. And if you can really master that flow, you'll eventually learn how to deliver the quality side of it and level that up on the back end. And that's the trifecta. So I appreciate you guys sharing this. Is there any shout outs that you want to give to people? I know you're going to be at Bullhorn. Any shout outs that you want to give leading up to Bullhorn Engage here in a couple of weeks?
No, we'll be at Engage, and if you're planning on attending, come by the Staffing Engine booth you got a pretty good overview of what we've been building. There are a couple things that we're going to be announcing at the show. So I'll give you a little teaser to come by the booth and learn a little bit more. And excited to see whoever's planning on going.
Love it. Love it. Well, Jay and Matt, I appreciate your guys' time and showing me the technology. I'll get all the links. I got both of your emails, contact information, LinkedIn. We'll get it on page here and in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.